Hi, my name is Molly Haycock, and I am the assistant winemaker here at Scott Harvey Wines. Today, I'm going to be walking you through how to run a pH test on your wine and how to adjust that pH in the lab. We use pH to determine the acidity level in most solutions, but today I'm only going to be focusing on wine. pH is actually a negative logarithmic representation of the concentration of hydrogen ions in wine. Now what that means is it's a logarithm, which means that as you move up and down the scale, that each integer represents a factor of 10. And that also means that as the number of hydrogen ions or the concentration of hydrogen ions increases, it means the acidity is increasing, but the number on the scale is decreasing. That's also true of the opposite. So as you decrease the number of hydrogen ions, you're decreasing acidity and you're moving up the scale of pH. For example, a wine like our dry Riesling has a pH of about 2.9, and that means that it has more acidity and more hydrogen ion concentration than something like, say, our Mountain Selection Zinfandel, which has a pH usually of about 3.5 to 3.55. Let's get to the test. There are many types of pH meters on the market, and I'm going to show you the two that we use most often. The first is this handheld model. It's great for when you're working down in the cellar and don't want to be moving back and forth between the lab and whatever you're working on. And it's great for when you have really quick calculations and measurements that you want to take. Our other setup is our regular lab setup pH meter. This is the one we're going to be focusing on today as we do our measurements and our adjustments. It's great. You can see it's got an external probe, and we have it on a stir plate because when you're making adjustments, you want to make sure that you are able to mix it really well. It helps for more accurate readings. So we keep it on a magnetic stir plate. The screen and the actual measurement system is relatively user-friendly, and it works really great for us. So let's get on with what we're actually going to test today. You'll need a few more things before you can properly run your pH test. You need a sample of wine. I've got some Barbera up here, and you'll need some pH buffers. We use the pH buffers to calibrate your pH meter. We have a buffer of pH 7 and a buffer of pH 4. These can be found at pretty much any lab supply company. The pH 7 buffer is typically yellow in color, and the pH 4 buffer tends to be in the pink to red range. We use these buffers because a pH of 7 is neutral. It's the pH of freshly distilled water. And the pH of 4 buffer is important for calibrating the lower end of our pH scale. Wine tends to be in a range from the high 2s all the way up to, in some New World winemaking styles, about 4. So we want to make sure that that end of this scale is very, very accurate meter. We have some beakers set up. You'll see I have a few small beakers for our buffers and a 200 ml beaker for our wine sample. We find that a 200 ml sample gives us a really accurate number, and it also gives us really accurate information when we're doing adjustments. Speaking of adjustments, we've got our tartaric acid solution and our potassium carbonate solution. Both of those are 100 grams per liter concentration, and how we mix those up is we measure 10 grams of either tartaric acid granules or potassium carbonate granules, and we mix those with 100 ml of distilled water. We also have a pipette for when we add those solutions to our wine when we want to make a pH adjustment. The last thing is you'll notice I have some magnetic stir bars in each beaker, and what that does is it helps to mix up those solutions, and it helps to keep the sample moving for an accurate reading. Alright, we've got our pH 7 buffer on our meter right now, and we're going to go ahead and start our calibration. Ours is set up where it's a simple button push and it starts the calibration process. Right now it's reading that solution at a 7.04 pH, and it's going to adjust itself down so that it's ready for the next one. and it's indicating that we're ready. I'm going to go ahead and remove the pH 7 buffer. Give that probe a little bit of a rinse and a little bit of a dab to dry. And then we'll move on to our pH 4 buffer. And for the sake of our meter, we go ahead and just hit that calibration button again. And it started reading the pH 4 buffer as 4.06. And it's going to drop that down to 4.00. We'll wait a minute for that to happen. And there it's stabilized. And now we can go into our regular read mode. And usually if you're within 0.01 in either direction of your buffer, you're completely fine. Ours right now is reading a 3.99. To give you an idea of what the screen on our pH meter looks like, I'll try to get this without some of the glare. 0.01, 0.02, we're usually pretty happy with that. So now we'll go ahead and measure our wine sample. Remove the buffer. We're going to give it a rinse again. We want to make sure that the probe is clean and does not have any residual buffer on it. Again, dab it to dry. We'll take our 200 mils of wine and we'll go ahead and let that measure. So right now we are getting a measurement of about 3.44, 3.45. Because this is Barbera, we're pretty happy with that pH. We're all right with the pH being a little bit lower for Barbera since it is a more naturally acidic grape. But if we were going to adjust it up to our regular level of 3.55, we go ahead and start using some potassium carbonate. So I've got a pipette full of that 100 grams per liter potassium carbonate, and we'll just let it drip into the wine. Especially with potassium carbonate, you want to add it very, very slowly because it does have the potential to burn the wine, and so you want to be very careful with it. And even with just 3 drops, we've already increased 0.02. We're up to 3.46. So go ahead and add a little bit more. And there we're at 3.55, so just over 0.6 of a milliliter of the potassium carbonate solution is enough to get us where we need to go. Now we have some software that we can share with you that we use to calculate what this means for an addition down in the cellar. So if we made this decision that we wanted to adjust the pH up from 3.45 up to 3.55, we'd use that 0.6 milliliter of potassium carbonate number, and we'd input that into our software and it would let us know how many pounds of potassium carbonate we'd need to add for a specific volume of wine. Thanks so much for joining us today for seeing how we do pH measurements, and we look forward to seeing you soon.